At the Conscious Business Academy, we cover many aspects of what a conscious business, conscious leader should be and should do. In many aspects, it's also a pullback to values that have been eroded or lost, such as care for colleagues, care for and appreciation of customers. Mindfulness is a big part of the effective conscious business. I wanted to know how it's delivered in a stressful business like a vet's. So for the Conscious Business Show, I connected online with the CEO and founder of Webinar Vet, Anthony Chadwick. Welcome, Anthony.
Hello, Malcolm.
Anthony, before we get into the question of mindfulness, give us a brief overview of what Webinar Vet does.
So Webinar Vet was set up in 2010 by myself. I am a vet as well. And it was set up really to help make veterinary education, postgraduate education, so vets who have qualified and nurses, obviously we want to continue to learn and get better at our jobs. And in fact, we have to do that. The Royal College tell us we have to do so many hours a year. So it was set up to make receiving that education a lot easier. By doing it on the internet, it obviously cuts out travel time. It democratizes learning. It makes it cheaper. So it's delivering of continuing education to vets, nurses, and other people involved in the veterinary profession.
So let's talk about mindfulness. Why is it important within a veterinary practice, and how does Webinar Vet help? What's the Mind Matters initiative?
It's really interesting. Probably go back about 5 years, and I met a really interesting guy who was doing mindfulness for GPs as well. And at the same time, the Royal College, which is a real regulator with a heart, so the Royal College is there to protect the public from rogue vets and vets who, aren't doing their training and so on. But they also understood that we're a profession with a problem. We have very high stress levels. Unfortunately, some of the highest suicide rates amongst professionals as well. Wow. And, it was really important that we did something about that. And the CEO of the time and the communication director at the Royal College put quite a lot of money into forming this concept of the Mind Matters initiative. What was the problem? How could we start to solve that problem? And I knew people at the Royal College quite well, and I went to them and said, well, as part of the solution, maybe we all need to sort of calm down and relax a bit. We live such a frenetic lifestyle now. We've lost that ability to just be quiet and be silent and, take a breath and relax because we're moving so quickly. And we agreed that we would do a mindfulness course over 8 weeks for the profession. And we would charge a little bit, but we would make it really cheap enough that nobody would say this is too expensive for us to do it. And the Royal College supported that with a small grant. Well, of course, the results were amazing. We set it up and we had several thousand vets, nurses, practice managers, kennel maids, people from pharmaceutical industry who bought tickets, came on them, and it wasn't for everyone. Of course, we got some people who said, it's not for me, and they didn't carry on with the course. But a lot of people came back with testimonials which were amazingly powerful. As Webinar Vet, we do training, which is mainly clinical training, how to make your dog better if it's got a sore leg or bad skin. And of course, we know that the quality of that is very high, and we get, a nice comment at the end of a webinar. That was a great webinar. Thank you very much. These were different. These were sort of life-changing statements. I've been on your webinar training and I'm not shouting at my nurses anymore. I've been on your webinar training and I went on holiday for the first time and didn't worry about the business. Really, really powerful. As a purpose-centered business, I want to make a difference in my community, which is that veterinary community. I'm a vet myself. And so to get something back, which even if it was just 1 or 2 people saying this has made a difference is good enough for me. But this wasn't 1 or 2, it was lots and lots of people coming back with testimonials. And in fact, the chap who did the training for us, a guy called Mike Scanlon, a psychiatric nurse, he then had people approaching him and they started doing more one-to-one work on Skype which we hadn't planned for, but which just happened. So it really met a need. Sometimes people just need to have a chat with somebody, but sometimes also people just need to slow down, breathe in, and enjoy this fantastic world that we have in front of ourselves. We can very easily get into a spiral of negativity, can't we? And I think mindfulness sometimes just acts as a way of stopping yourself and being able to reset. So we've found it really, really effective. And we've gone on to do training on positivity, sleep. A lot of people, I'm amazed. I've just 2 nights ago couldn't sleep all night. I had a really, really bad tooth, sort of a lockdown dental issue that hasn't gone away because the dentists haven't been open. And yesterday it was removed. And I'm already feeling a lot more chirpy, but I sleep very well, but not to sleep for a night and the next day have to work and have the tooth out was tough. There are lots of people out there who don't sleep very well. Again, after that training, people were coming back and saying just with 1 or 2 tips, they were sleeping better. And those sort of things, as I say, make me really happy that we're making a difference as a company, in people's lives.
Brilliant. It really is brilliant. And I'm totally with you on the importance of stress. What really sort of suddenly learned, though, when you go to the vets and you think it's a happy time because it's making dogs better, but then they've got to do the other side, sadly put down animals. And yeah. One aspect of mindfulness, though, that I've encountered is the business leader who thinks it's all mumbo jumbo and that his or her people don't need it. How do you counter this thinking?
Well, first thing I would say is it's usually his rather than her. So we're a very female orientated profession. And, obviously I don't want to be sexist and generalizing, but the people who are less likely to embrace it are usually men. We're sometimes a bit afraid of just saying, I'm struggling here. Whereas a woman will have a group of friends and they'll, talk about things, around a table. Whereas men often just take the mickey out of each other when we meet up, don't we? So it can be more of a male problem, although, obviously not completely. I think the first thing I would say is that we have to take responsibility for ourselves. So obviously, just because an employer doesn't want to do it doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. And, we can be in danger of becoming a nanny state where we expect everything to be done for us. So I don't think we should place blame if somebody doesn't believe in it. But we can also try and gently persuade people. They can see a difference in us if we're doing it as well. Of course, if you've got somebody who really, isn't wanting to look after his team or her team, then maybe that's a good sign that you need to move on and find something else, which I know is difficult in the middle of a pandemic. But I think it's really important to work in a place where you feel you're valued and, is a happy place, and you actually go in with a smile on your face and you enjoy your job. So I think, obviously it's not for everyone, mindfulness. It's not a panacea for all the world's ills. But I think also, every company should be interested in well-being. I did an article the other day for a magazine, and it was saying all about this well-being and everything. Well, I've always been interested in my team. I mean, I sometimes have people from the team emailing me at 10 o'clock at night and I tell them off. You shouldn't be at the computer at that time. We need to learn to not work so hard, because if we're doing that all the time, if we're working till 10 o'clock at night, actually the quality of what we produce diminishes. So, it's good for the business to have people who are energized, not working too hard, working clever rather than hard. But I think a final thing, don't be too critical of somebody who doesn't get it, because not everybody will, but, do it yourself if it benefits you.
When a client has to contact a vet, it may be because their pet is in distress, which often leads to the client also being in distress. Do you think your mindfulness learning will help the vet help the client more sympathetically?
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt about that. It's interesting, we have different personalities as vets, and you'll see this in the medical world. Surgeons often don't have much of a bedside manner. They're very good at fixing legs, but not necessarily talking to people. I think, again, if you have that mindfulness training, it maybe does help you to understand people, to be more empathetic to people. And, if people come in and they are anxious, sometimes they can lash out. I think often I often would realize that wasn't because of what I'd done. That was their problem. And I think if you can be empathetic to people, I used to talk a lot when I had my practice, and you will get some vets who say, I love the animals, but I don't really like the people. They're animal lovers, but they're not people lovers. I was lucky enough in my profession that I love people, but I also love animals. And I would say, do you know what? I don't really have any bad clients. Of course, you get the odd person who just is unreasonable no matter what you do. But I said, my clients are all lovely. And I think in the end, it is how you treat people. If you treat people well, people on the whole will treat you well back again, won't they? So it works. It's a sensible thing to do. And I think we're beginning to see that, because a lot of the training now at university and even post-grad training is around those soft skills. When people get reported to the Royal College, most of the time it's about communication. It's not about they did a bad job on the leg, although it can be that. It's often that communication wasn't good. So, it's such an important area that we work on, because, when people are stressed and frightened of losing their dog or whatever, they don't always listen. So it's really important that we get those messages across to them very clearly and empathetically.
Totally agree with you. Looking back with your vast experience in the veterinary world and your knowledge of change, what 3 things would you like vets' practices to be in themselves, say, within the next 5 or 10 years?
I think there's a few things that I think are really important, and I won't put these in any particular order of importance, so because for everybody it's a bit different. We're in a really interesting time in history, aren't we, Malcolm, with the pandemic, the Black Lives Matter movement, and we're very blessed in the veterinary profession. We have just elected for the first time a black female president of the Royal College of Veterinary Surgeons. I worry that the profession is, because of the difficulty and the expense of becoming a vet now. When I went, I was a very working class boy from Anfield by the football ground, and I had a dream of wanting to be a vet, and I was very, very fortunate that I got through and managed to live that out. And I've had, a great career in a job that there's not many jobs better than being a veterinary surgeon. I think now, with the cost of it, we're in danger of only having vets who are from middle class and upper class backgrounds. So I think it's really important that we work on diversity, and that is also particularly color or race or gender shouldn't be a blockage to you being able to follow your dream. So I'd love to see more diversity. It's still a very white profession. So I'd like to see that change. One of my other things I'm very passionate about is the environment. We did quite a lot of work recently on plastics in the ocean, and just getting that sort of message across as well. But we can do things, within the business. We've just been nominated with the Liverpool Echo, our local rag, as a Green Business of the Year. And I think it's really important that if we as vets are not interested in the natural world, in sustainability and green issues, who is going to be? Being involved in those issues, animal welfare as well. So I think it's really important that we as vets really take leadership in that area as well. And surprise, surprise, for the last 5 years, I've been talking to the vets and saying, you have to become more digital. You have to be able to make appointments online. You have to have an active Facebook presence, telemedicine. Don't let the big corporations take that over. Make sure that you as a vet in practice are leading that as well. I have to say, Malcolm, I'm not a very persuasive person. There's a tiny little micrometer-sized microbe called the coronavirus that has done a much better job than I have in waking people up to the importance of being more digitally savvy. And we've seen that in the last 3 to 6 months, businesses have digitally transformed more in those 3 to 6 months than they probably would have done in 3 to 6 years. But I think, if people don't do that, businesses won't survive. So I think continuing with that message of saying you have to be more digital.
Anthony Chadwick of the Webinar Vet, you have truly illustrated to me that you are a best practice in conscious business. Thank you for the interview.
Thanks, Malcolm.